everyone. Well, good evening, folks. Ken Hovind here at Dinosaur Adventureland, second show today. Thank you for joining us. It is still August 25th, 2024. We're going to have a debate tonight with my friend Jackson Rowe sitting beside me here. He's going to defend the idea that AJ started about whales evolved from a dog-like animal through the Pachycetus stage and all that kind of stuff. So who said we let him go first? I believe the Bible is true. God made everything in 6 days, and they bring forth according to their kind. There is no evidence for evolution. That's my position. So Jackson's going to tell us that I'm wrong, and he's right, and we evolved from something else. So thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, call 855-BIG-DINO, extension. Who do they call for you, Sergio? You don't have an extension yet? Sandra, see if you can figure that out to get him one. Okay. Anyway, call extension. How do they get questions in tonight? Right on screen? If you have questions, just type them in right there, and we'll get them up and cover that tonight. Okay, Jackson, take it away. Tell us about whale evolution.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me again.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Come anytime.
Yep.
How'd you like Dinosaur Adventureland?
I like it. I like it.
Okay.
A lot of people aren't going to like me saying that, but I like it.
You're going to make the atheists mad thinking, yeah.
Yeah. All right. But anyway, I'm going to talk about mostly the fossil history of the whales from Pachycetus, which you mentioned, all the way to baleen whales pretty much today.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Pachycetids. There's a few species of those, or There's ambulocetids, protocetids, remingtonocetids, basilosaurids, and it goes to more modern forms like eomystocetids and adiocetids, which is really just one thing, Adiocetus. And let me just explain what all those are. Pachycetus, of course, is just it looks superficially like a dog, but it wasn't a dog. It was actually an artiodactyl, had hooves on the end of its fingers, and still had the nostrils at the end of the snout, but it had an auditory bulla like modern whales and only found in whales. And it had teeth like later protocetids and dense bones. The teeth are pretty diagnostic, especially in mammals, as to what something is. So I'll bring that up more later. Myocetus was a pretty large protocetid whale. It was semi-aquatic, but apparently still gave birth on land. It was found with a fetus fossilized in it, and it gave birth head first, which means it probably gave birth on land. It's hard for me to read my handwriting. Hang on. It had webbed feet based on its the structure of its foot bones, but it apparently had very weak feet, so it probably wasn't very good at walking on its hind limbs anyway. So it probably moved something like a seal or a walrus. Then there was well, I'm leaving a bunch of these out. There are like 50 of these. But Protocetus, I'm including the most significant ones. Protocetus had a fluke based on the compression of the caudal vertebra. A lot of creationists will seize on Ambulocetus because they didn't find that it had a fluke, but they kind of depicted it that way. But here's one, a protocetid called Protocetus, that did have a fluke, but still 4 well-developed limbs. Georgocetus is probably the most significant one that I think is the most significant one. It had a detached pelvis, but 4 well-developed limbs, but that indicates it couldn't walk on its hind limbs at all, and was probably giving birth in the water by then, but a fetus hasn't been found preserved yet. And its teeth were more basilosaurid-like than the previous protocetids. It had the double-rooted molars with serrated teeth that resemble almost identical to Basilosaurus. The significance of that is Basilosaurus is kind of acknowledged by creationists to be a whale, but the protocetids, including Georgocetus, is said to not be a whale. And Sergio, if you'll put both of those images up on the screen, that first image there, that's Georgocetus, that's its skull. You see a few of its teeth. Some of the teeth are found separate near the skull, and some are on the lower jaw, which I didn't include in that photo. Now, if you'll switch over to the other one, this is a Zygariza. I forget how to pronounce it. Zygariza. But that's a Basilosaurus. It's a basilosaurid whale, which even creationists acknowledge must be a whale. They're about 50 feet long. and had very reduced limbs and flippers in the front, reduced hind limbs. But would you flash those two side by side really quick, Sergio? Georgicetus there and a basilosaurid whale. They're basically identical, including the teeth. Now, the only reason we're drawing a line between those is because it's inconvenient to say if this is a whale, but this, well, then this must also be a whale. So we've got to draw an imaginary line between it and say they're totally different. So now the next significant line would be the Eomystacetids, which actually had teeth that were vestigial. I know Kent brings up the pelvic bones in modern whales, and they're not really vestigial, but they have a purpose for reproduction. But for all intents and purposes, it appears that the teeth of the Eomystacetids were vestigial. They were not used for eating any longer. They were filter feeders, but according to the structure of their jaws, they weren't lunge feeders like modern baleen whales. But their teeth were too small and too far spaced to have served any real purpose. So they were probably skim feeders like modern beaked whales. Then the last on the line of significant transitions would be Adiocetus. It had a combination of both teeth and baleen. So apparently we went from teeth that didn't do much to teeth and baleen to just baleen in modern whales. And in Adiocetus and Eomystacetids, the blowhole was just in front of the eyes instead of just behind the eyes like in modern whales. And there's some genetic evidence that the last common ancestor between any modern animal would be the hippo, actually. The hippo is the most closely related animal to the whale, according to genetics, which was, I believe that was unexpected when they discovered that. But it makes sense once you think about it. They both have similar skin. They're both hooved. Well, the protocetids and the pachycetids were hooved. And they give birth in the water, but they share 11,000 genes together, and some of the genes only whales and hippos share. Nothing else in the world has those genes. So they do appear to share a common ancestor with another living animal closely. And the fossil history for the whales is really extensive. I could go over about 30 more, but just for the sake of time, I just included those main ones. So that's really my opening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, put my slides up there, brother. The Bible says very clearly, Genesis chapter 1, God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moved, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind." So the Bible is clearly claiming that God did it, and he did it they started off as whales. Everything you gave tonight, Jackson, is based on fossils found in the dirt someplace or in the rock someplace, which you cannot prove any of those fossils had any children. You certainly can't prove they had children that were different or children that lived that were different. So I think it's a wild imagination to say we know whales came from something that like a dog-like animal, Pachycetus, named because it was found in Pakistan. That's just imagination. It's not science. Science is what we can observe and study and test. What we observe is all the different types of whales today have babies just like themselves. That we observe. Everything about evolution is imagination. God said they'll bring forth after their kind the winged fowl after his kind. God saw that it was good. And this took place on the 5th day. So the great God of the universe created whales and birds on the 5th day and clearly told the world how he did it, or that he did it, in a perfect book that he wrote and preserved that book. This is what I believe, okay? He inspired 40 different men on 3 different continents to write over 1,500 years, period of 1,500 years, and still made it blend together as one book. That is inspiration of God. So I believe God and the mighty host of angels were eyewitnesses to this act of amazing creation of these creatures. God said they would bring forth after their kind. That's all anyone has ever seen. There is no farmer in the history of the world who will tell you they saw any animal that they raise, whether it's hamsters or cows or anything, bring forth anything other than their kind. We have 2 pregnant cows on our North 40. I bet you $5 they're going to have a baby calf. But without it unseen, haven't seen it yet. I know it'll be, okay? So that is what's called science. The problem is this evolution religion has been so thoroughly stirred in with science, people think it's part of it. It's not part of it. It's a religious belief. And I wish the evolutionists would at least admit it. Here's the problem. If they admit the obvious, this is something I believe. It's not something I can prove. It's just something I believe. I believe we should draw a line between these two. I believe this one evolved to this one. We didn't see that. We don't see it. We don't see it happening today. So they imagine that it happened. Great. If they would admit it's a religion, then all of a sudden they would lose all their government funding to put a religion in the public schools. Money is the motive. They can't admit the obvious. It's something you believe in. It's nothing but a religion. I believe God did it. I admit mine's a religion. I admit it. They will not admit theirs is a religion. I think God's testimony that they'll bring forth after their kind has never been refuted. Nobody's ever seen it happen otherwise. After their kind, after 20 sometimes in the first 7 chapters, bring forth of the same sort, same kind, okay? So science is different from other fields. Science is knowledge gained from observation and experiments to describe the world around us. If you wish to give an explanation to students and say, we believe a Pakicetus, a dog-like animal, evolved into a whale, that's just a fairy tale in my book. Where is the observation or the experiments to show it happened? There are a whole bunch of dog-like animals today. Let's make another whale from one of them. And their answer will be, well, it takes millions of years. Precisely my point. It's not observable. And until it's observed, it's not science. Science, from the Latin word scientia, knowledge, knowing. What do we know? We know cows make baby cows. We know dogs make baby dogs. We know that. We do not know dogs turn to a whale. System of knowledge concerned with the physical world and phenomena that entails unbiased observations and systematic experimentation. Bingo, I agree. And evolution isn't science. We've observed whales producing baby whales many times. The bowhead whale always has a baby bowhead whale. The baleen whale always has a baby baleen whale. The sperm whale always has baby sperm whales. There are no exceptions. The babies turn out just about like mom and dad every time. So if you wish to imagine something different, welcome, fine, imagine what you want. But quit calling it science. Baby beluga whales in Canada. North Atlantic right whale and calf. Yep. So far, gray whales, all that's been observed is that whales produce baby whales that are the same kind. So everything they're saying with this evolution, all these charts that they make, are nothing but SpongeBob imagination. Now I'll say this. Here, let me get my chart here. Right here. They have on the family tree. Sergio, wake up. Okay. They have the protozoa, the single-celled creature, evolving into everything, including the whales. So they've got whales related to flamingos and sunflowers and, let's see, crawdads. This is not science. This is imagination. You're welcome to believe that. But this is a propaganda poster. This is not science. It's purely propaganda. That's all. And even if it later turns out to be true, until then, it's not science and should not be in a science book. That's my whole complaint. That's not my whole complaint. That's one of my complaints. They're teaching religion, stirring it into a science class, and it should not be. Baleen whales evolved from toothed whales, this article says. You don't know that. 76 species of toothed whales, whales with teeth. 14 species of baleen whales. They don't have teeth. They got the baleen strips that hang down. Okay. Satan, the liar and enemy of all truth, fooled his followers, including AJ, that I debated on whales a few months ago, about June, I think. My opponent, I said tonight, here's my slides from that day. The tiny dot exploded, and the fragments cooled to be a hot rock, which got rained on, and later made pools of chemicals that came to life as a single-celled creature that evolved into all the forms today. And all they have is artwork, pictures, showing pictures of similarities between two animals is not evidence of evolution relationship. It could just as well be evidence of a common designer. It's a good design that works. Maybe the Pakicetus had thicker bones around his ear like a whale because he needs thicker bones around his ear for whatever he does. Does not prove a relationship. Maybe monkeys have hands like ours because they need to do the things that we need to do, pick up stuff and move it around. You need radius and ulna to twist and the flexors and extender. Maybe they have this common need in nature. Maybe they're designed to do the same thing. I think if you look at the robots they're making, the AI robots, they also have a common, they use fingers, don't they? But it's too complicated to give them 4 fingers and a thumb. I think they just give them 2 or 3 fingers to save money. God did it for perfect. First time. Works good. And you can make a baby that has the same thing. It's real simple to make a baby like that. And they'll have 4 fingers and a thumb. You don't need a robot. So I think all this stuff is artwork, and you're welcome to believe it. But they have here the protista, single-celled creature, turning into a fish, and then an amphibian, then reptiles, and finally mammals. Just memorize the word farm, F-A-R-M, fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal. There we go. They use artwork and lines on paper to fool the gullible with these silly family trees. And they want to join you in their satanic religion, and they proudly call that science. It isn't science. Fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal. So let's see, I had AJ in there. Oh, he looks cute tonight, doesn't he? Okay, let's see. That was back in June. Did the debate with him. Calls himself my friend, atheist friend, and humble narrator. He's anti-God, admits it. Okay. He thinks God lied. God said he made him on day 5, and they've always brought forth after their kind. So the 3 to 5 foot long wolf-like mammal, Pakicetus, supposedly evolved into the modern 100-foot, 200-ton whale. I think that's imagination. Okay. Let's see right here. Here's Pakicetus, the first whale, according to the American Museum of Natural History. 4-footed land animal named Pakicetus lived 50 million years ago. Now stop. How do you know that? How do they know it's 50 million years ago? Well, that's based on the stupid, non-existent geologic column. The basic theme of whale evolution is development of large animals from smaller ancestors. And nowhere is this more evident than the case of multi-ton sperm gray whales whose ultimate forebears were small, dog-sized prehistoric mammals that roamed the riverbeds of Central Asia. Whales, a case study in the gradual evolution of mammals from fully terrestrial to fully marine. So it changed from a land 4-legged animal to a whale in the water with a fluke on the back and does not have the 4 legs anymore. First whales, Pakicetus, indistinguishable from other modern small mammals of the early Eocene period. There's no Eocene period. That whole chart is imagination. I've been asking, maybe you can answer it, Jackson. I've been asking evolutionists for years now. If the top layer of your geologic column is younger, where did it come from? Every speck of dirt in the universe is the same age, whether 6,000 or 6 trillion. Pick a number. I don't care what number you pick. The obvious point is they're the same age. If it all came from a big bang, then everything's 13.772 billion years old. Telling me when it got moved from here to here doesn't change the age of it. Think about it. Here's Pakicetus. That's going to be the big one. About 1 meter long, 3'3", size of a wolf or large dog. When whales walked, PBS, public BS system, organ. Okay, and that's what it is. Okay, measuring 100 feet and 200 tons. You think a dog-like animal turned to a 200-ton whale? Berkeley University did an article. First whales, Pakicetus, typical land animals. Long skulls, large teeth. From the outside, they don't look much like whales because they're not, and they don't turn to whales. No animal changes to something else. So I could go on for hours on this. This is one of the many topics I cover of the lies in the textbooks on my video number 4. Push my videos here for a minute. No, I don't have it here. Anyway, seminar part 4, lies in the textbook. I don't mind if somebody wants to believe this stuff. Jackson, believe whatever you want. But you cannot show scientific evidence that any animal turned to something else other than claiming, well, look at the similarities. That's not evidence that they changed. That can't be evidence that they changed. We don't see it happening today. So why would you imagine it could happen from a dead animal you found in the rocks? Why could they do something no animal today can do? I just think it's time evolutionists stop and say, you're right. this isn't really science. We believe this strongly. Well, good. That's your religion. Go start the Church of the Evolutionists and have them pay tithes or whatever they want to do, or 6% probably, to support your religion. But quit using federal tax dollars and state tax dollars to push your religion off on these kids. That's my point. It's not science. Go ahead, brother. What's your next?
All right. Well, given the distribution of the fossils, the genetic evidence, and the timeline that apparently lines up, what I mean by distribution of the fossils, like there was something called the Tethys Sea in the Eocene period, which you don't believe in the Eocene period, but let's say for sake of argument, you do. There was geologic evidence shows there was a sea between Egypt and India about 40, 50 million years ago.
Where Pakistan is today.
Right. And these protocetids and basilosaurids are found in India and Egypt and some of the northern areas like Ukraine even for basilosaurids. So the fact that that lines up, the genetics evidence lines up with them having a close relative alive today and a common ancestor based on molecular clock data at about the right time with that ancestor. And just the general similarities with the skeletons and the timeline, they seem to form a sequential order. I think it's basically statistically impossible that it wouldn't be, that it wouldn't be evolution. But you mentioned a few things that whales have today. Well, a few that I mentioned, like Idiocetus, they have both teeth and baleen. Protocetus, they have both 4 limbs and a fluke. And those lines on paper, I mean, they make those. That's a simple one. They make big phylogenetic charts out of genetic information, sequencing genes and comparing it all to all of them and lining it all up in a big, like, really complex graph. And the size of the Pachycetus to like a blue whale, from Pachycetus to Ambulocetus, Ambulocetus got like 10 or 12 feet long. Myocetus got bigger. Georgocetus was 30 or 40 feet. Basilosaurus is 40, 50 feet. And from there, they just got bigger. I mean, they do gradually grow with time. But that getting bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. That just means that's what happened to occur with this line. And of course, not all whales or dolphin species are huge today. Like the vaquita is only about 3 or 4 feet long today. That's the smallest one. They're about extinct, though. There may be 10 of them left in the world. But anyway.
Okay. Well, once again, you making a claim that a 3-foot animal turned to a 13-foot animal, turned to a 40-foot animal. We don't see it happening today. This isn't science. And finding them in a place like Pakistan, when you're claiming there used to be a sea there, I'd say there was a sea all over the whole world called Noah's Flood. Sure, you're going to find fossils. You're going to find sea-dwelling creatures make their fossils in the desert. They find whale fossils in the Sahara Desert. What does that prove? That proves the Bible's true. There was a flood that flooded the whole world. Animals can be found anywhere. So you covered several things. You mentioned the distribution of fossils. Now stop and think about that. If fossils are distributed around the world, how should that be interpreted? I would agree. Fossils are distributed all over the world. All kinds of fossils. Clams found on top of Mount Everest. I would agree. Sea-dwelling creatures like clams, or water-dwelling creatures, because some are freshwater, some are saltwater, found on top of Mount Everest. I would agree. Now, there is a distribution to the fossils. I think that is better explained by a flood and the tide going up and down, tidal pumping, rushing in and out of that tidal bump every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes, would distribute all kinds of animals, and they turn to fossils. I think the animals are distributed based upon their body density, based upon their habitat, based upon other factors other than evolution. You say, well, they'll say, well, clams are found at the lower layers. I agree. Generally, clams are found in the low layers, though they are found on Mount Everest. Okay. Generally, clams are found lower. That's not evidence they evolved first. They're the first ones to drown in a flood. They're already at the bottom when the flood starts. Of course, they're going to be found at the bottom. Birds are generally found on top, not because they evolved last. They're the last ones to drown in a flood. So I agree. There is no such thing as an Eocene era. Put my slides back up here, brother. Let me show you this. Here's a chart that they use from one, and you mentioned hippopotamus is the closest relative. Now, No animals are related to any other animals. None, other than their same kind. Maybe all the dogs are related, but that doesn't prove dogs are related to bananas. This idea, are they related? They use this word so freely, and it's just nothing but religious propaganda. It's a cult. Evolution is. Here they have a thick bony wall around the middle inner ear. Okay, so the Pakicetus has a thick bone around the inner ear. Okay, that proves it's related to something else. How do you jump to that conclusion from a thick bone? Maybe it's designed to have a thick bone around the inner ear. So here we go. Thick bone or Pakicetus found in Pakistan, turning to ambulocetus. You don't know that one turned into the other. You mentioned Pakicetus 3 or 4 feet long, and the ambulocetus, 13 feet long? It's a totally different animal. They were created as two totally different animals, and they got buried in the flood and drowned and turned to fossils, and we find fossils. Why would you draw a line connecting them? How do you know Pakicetus and ambulocetus are related at all? Similarities in the DNA or in the chromosomes or in the mating habits or whatever, any similarities you can find, and anatomical similarities, behavioral similarities, are all better explained as evidence of the same guy designed them. I think you find a whole lot of cars driving down the highway have a wheel that the driver can hold. He's turning it this way and the wheels are turning this way. Whoa. And there's quite a complex steering mechanism to make that happen. And most of them have similarities in the steering mechanism. It's a design that works. You got to have it. This isn't science to say one evolved into the other. It's purely imagination. You're welcome to believe it, but I'm sick and tired of you guys calling it science and making everybody pay to teach that in the schools. So can you explain? Can you put mine up at the same time and he can explain? And put him in there. Let him talk. Now, can you get all three of us in there? Can't do that. Okay. You claimed, Jackson, Pakicetus evolved or turned into ambulocetus. Why do you think they're related?
Well, it didn't necessarily evolve into ambulocetus. There's some missing there, and even they draw it like that. It says
okay, many steps in between. Okay, I'll give you 10 trillion steps in between. Why do you think any animal turned or changed into some other kind of animal? Why do you believe that?
Why would they evolve? You mean? What purpose would there be?
Not what purpose. How did this happen?
How would it happen? It would be just small changes over time added up.
So you believe? Do we see small changes over time adding up today?
Well, you see small changes today, but we don't have the lifespan. Even all of written human history, we don't have the time to observe that kind of change. But it stands to reason that if you put 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, it's not going to equal 1, it's going to equal 4. You see what I'm saying?
So are you admitting then that it's not observable, therefore it's not really science in the modern definition?
Well, it's not observable in the sense that you mean. It's observable through genetics and fossils, especially genetics. Like you can make the argument, maybe this is all a big coincidence with the fossils, but genetics, you can't really make that argument.
So your argument from genetics is they have similar genetic structure, right?
Right. Well,
okay. Could we write sentences in English that have thousands of similarities using the same 26 letters, sometimes in the same order?
Could you write 50 books with similar topics, and some of them were changed in certain ways, and would they form? I kind of lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Okay. You're in the middle of my library. How many books do I have in here?
A lot.
Thousands. Okay. I would be willing to bet all the books in my library written in English, which I think is nearly all of them, use the same 26 letters.
Probably.
I bet you'd find the letter A in probably every one of these books. Does that prove one turned into the other, or that's a good code to write with?
Well, for books, it would just be a good way to write. But
could it be DNA is a good way to write instructions to make an animal produce an ear or a leg or a hair or something? Could it be it's a set of instructions that works good? The same God?
Well, it is.
Did that?
It is a good way to
could it be that it was designed that way? Is that even a possibility with you, that a designer did that?
Of course, it could be a possibility, but even if that was the case, I still think evolution would be how he's doing it.
Well, I would say that'd be a dumb God to use evolution. Just make it right the first time.
Well,
my God made it right first time.
Maybe so.
Well, okay. So now you mentioned the Eocene era a couple times. Let me ask you how you explain, if I got pictures of it coming up right here, Eocene right here. state the obvious. I like this. Somebody did a T-shirt. I state the obvious because I care. I guess there's a whole movement now to state the obvious. Oh, it should have been going all along. No one's ever seen any of these animals produce babies other than their same kind. Nobody's ever seen any animal do that. Okay. Similarities in things like bones in the ear are not evidence of a relationship. I would say, Your Honor, that could be interpreted as evidence of a design that works. And drawing lines on paper is not science. Claiming you have evidence to draw that line on paper is only a claim. It's not observable, testable. We didn't see one change to the other. Claiming Pakicetus lived in the Eocene era. I should have put the circle around the Eocene. It's right there, about the fifth one from the top. 555.8 million years ago. The layers, they're claiming they're different ages. That's just simply not logical. Where's this top layer coming from? If the Eocene era is 55 million years old, that's what they're saying here. And in that era, in that layer, you find Pakicetus. Okay, this is the claim. It's 55 million years old, but the Archean era is 2.5 billion years old. So where was all the Eocene dirt hanging out for 2.949 billion years? Where was all that dirt hanging? Are the layers coming from outer space? If they're just rearranged, it's still the same age. What's wrong with my argument there?
Well, nothing. Well, a few things, but basically you're right. All the matter has basically been on Earth since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But what's changing is it's all decaying at different rates. All the elements decay at different rates. And that's what they're measuring when they do radiometric dating.
Not all elements decay,
Well,
only a few.
Well, all of them decay, but at different rates.
So iron decays?
Iron will decay.
Iron oxidizes into rust. I don't know that iron decays into a lower element. If you look at the
It
periodic
will
table.
after a very long time. Very long time.
So iron has a half-life.
It does.
Does hydrogen have a half-life? That's the first one. What does it decay into?
Hydrogen, yes, it has a half-life. Even hydrogen.
Well, hydrogen is the simplest element. That's number one on the chart. What does it
Well,
decay? What's number zero?
Well, there isn't a number zero.
So hydrogen can't decay into something lower.
No. Well,
does helium,
no,
number two, decay into hydrogen, number one?
Helium can decay into hydrogen, yes.
Okay. And so you could do helium dating, you could do iron dating.
Well, helium doesn't decay into hydrogen. Like uranium will decay into lead.
No, some of the elements do decay. I said that, but not all of them do. I don't think I'll have to research that.
Well, they all have a half-life. Like iron's not going to stay iron forever.
Hey, somebody Google that. Does iron have a half-life? Hello, would somebody please Google that? Does iron have a half-life? Okay. Okay. Anyway, I don't think it's logical to say the layers are different ages. To me, that's the start of the whole problem. This dumb geologist does it. What's it say? I agree with oxidize to turn to rust. Does it have a half? I've never heard of that before. Most of the elements are stable.
Stable over what period, though?
Stable period, forever.
Forever? All right, well.
Okay, anyway. They're claiming animals in a lower layer gave rise to animals above them. You can't possibly know such a thing. If animals are found sorted in some kind of sequence, that still would not prove a relationship. Okay? Mutations can add information. That's not observable. Add useful information. Both sexes of this improved mutant had to evolve in the same area at the same time. They found each other. They had babies that survived and that also found mates. So your whole theory of evolution is based on one animal producing a baby with a good beneficial mutation, which I don't think we've ever seen, a beneficial mutation. But if you did, there'd have to be two of the opposite sex in the same area. And they got to find each other and like each other. And then their babies have to carry on that mutation. And they got to find mates with the same mutation. I think it's pure imagination, SpongeBob. Even if it turns out later to be true, until that day, it's not observable science. So my point is, I would say there is no geologic column. There's no such thing as the Eocene era. No such thing. I think it was the sea where Pakistan is today. They claim that the powerful whale of the fluke of the whale produces 600 horsepower to push that big thing through the water. Could a dog swim at all with just his tail wagging up and down? Does he have the muscles to wag his tail up and down to propel himself? I don't think so. They generally whack them back and forth. Whales go up and down. Whales can swim, let's see, 38, 34 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour. This is, and the nasal opening moving back. They've just simply lined up skulls and claimed that one turned to the other. That's not science. That's an untested, unprovable claim. The nose went from the front slowly over many millions of generations, moved back to where it is today. That's not science. That's lines on paper is all it is. Nasal opening shifted back, and the eyes moved to the side of the head. And the tail fluke, very small hind legs, became a tail fluke. Am I the only one that's seeing this? This is an imagination story. This is a fairy tale, and you're welcome to believe it. But I wish they would quit calling it science. They're polluting our science books with their stupid religion, in my humble, totally unbiased opinion. Did I cover everything you said? Timelines? Yeah,
All right, I have a couple things.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, not both of the parents would have to have a mutation for it to get passed down. Like they're a dominant recessive, like Punnett
Right.
squares, learned about Punnett squares
Oh,
in
yeah,
high
yeah.
school.
I taught that in high school.
Yeah. So you don't need both of them to have it. One can pass it on and it spreads and becomes fixed eventually.
Okay, is the mutation that you're claiming there's a beneficial mutation, it gains a new feature.
Right.
Is it just as equally possible that it would be lost in the next generation?
It could be. Yeah, it takes a lot.
50-50
It
chance.
takes a lot to get it fixed in a population. Yeah.
Right. So
Well,
have we observed this happening, or is this, again, imagination?
Beneficial mutations?
Have we observed it taking over a population?
I believe so, but I can't give an example of that, but I can give an example of, well, I guess I can. You can look on Google Scholar, fungicide resistance,
Mhm.
pesticide resistance, antibiotic resistance, any kind of anything like that. Radiation resistance, even
Sure.
there's one organism that's radiation
There's
resistant
some
in
survive
nuclear reactors.
nuclear blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been found that it's because of a mutation, a beneficial mutation. And all of those that I gave examples of were because of a duplication mutation and then subsequent change on that duplicated section. So,
Well, my understanding of antibiotic resistance, for instance, or resistance to fungicide resistance, or things like that, the resistance to the bactericide is already in the gene code, and it now like if I took example, if I took a room full of cockroaches and I sprayed them all with Raid, okay, and it killed 99.9% of them, the 0.1% that were not killed had a natural resistance to Raid. I think all the experiments have shown that it's because they have lost something, not because they've gained something.
well,
For instance,
duplication mutations, it's adding something.
a duplication mutation is not adding. If I say, here's a book, here's 5 of the same book, that's duplicating, or in that case, duplicating, whatever. I'll go back to duplicating. Okay, I'll give you 2 books. It's still the same information. So it doesn't add anything new to the genetic code.
But that's when I said the duplicated section goes through like a point mutation. And that's what gives rise to antibiotic resistance or fungicide resistance or pesticide resistance or whatever.
Well, my understanding is that pesticide resistance, take the roaches as an example. It already had this resistance.
One of them did, or a few of them did.
A few of them did. So they're the only ones that survive and get to make the babies for the next generation.
And the ones that died off didn't have that.
They didn't have it. So you might eventually, over several generations, get a whole room full of cockroaches that are now resistant to Raid.
That have that.
It's still a cockroach.
Right.
That doesn't change it to a whale or anything else.
It's not, right. One point mutation is not going to change it to a new species even.
So, and you really believe that process of these little tiny changes becoming resistant to pesticides is enough evidence that we should require everybody to teach these family trees as science in a science class?
Well, I believe you should teach science in a science class. I do believe this is science, but when you force people to do it, I don't know about that. If they don't want to learn it, then don't make them. But
I don't think it should be paid for by tax dollars for us all to pay for evolution to be taught at all anywhere. Public funded museums, they should lose their funding if they're teaching evolution. Public school textbooks that teach evolution, they should lose their funding. They're teaching a religion at taxpayer expense. we don't see a roach becoming resistant to a pesticide and spreading that through the population. He didn't gain anything. He's never going to become resistant to a sledgehammer. Never.
Unless he grows a shell.
No?
Unless he grows a shell.
Have to get a really tough shell. Really tough shell. Give me the sledgehammer. It won't get tough enough for mine. Okay. So again, this is, as I've said thousands of times, imagination. Just imagine if we waited long enough. Stop. Right there, you're outside the realm of science. And I don't know why you guys can't see it or admit it unless you lose government funding. That's probably the reason.
Well, I'm not government funded, so
Huh?
I'm not government funded. I'm
Would you
freelance.
agree that the teaching of evolution is government funded?
Well, I don't think public schooling is government funded, but
Right. So
I don't
are they
think
teaching evolution in the public schools?
they are.
Government funded.
Well, actually, I don't know if I even learned evolution in school, come to think of it. If they did, they spent like maybe 3 days on it.
Well, you're surrounded by public school textbooks here.
Mhm.
Go take a
Well,
look for yourself.
Yeah, but being from Arkansas, I think they pretty much skipped over that.
Okay,
honestly.
good, very good. They should, because they should take it out of the book. So tonight is the discussion of the evolution of whales. You believe the evidence from finding similar DNA in the different creatures you've listed, Ambulocetus, Pakicetus, that is evidence enough to convince you that there's a relationship because they have similar DNA code. Is one of your
Well,
evidences.
They can't. It's too old to get any DNA out of
Right,
that.
right.
But DNA analysis of modern whales and other mammals, and given the closest relative and the molecular clock on that, tracing back to about the time they would have split.
See, tracing back again, that's imagination.
Well,
That's a time machine. Let's go back in time. We can't go back in time. All we can do
molecular
is
clock is like measuring a generation of like however many mutations per generation and tracking that back. So
well,
it kinda-
again, that
yeah.
would be way out in any honest court of law. That would not hold up as evidence to find a person guilty or innocent.
maybe not. Well, DNA evidence is convicted people alone.
Oh yeah. Well, they are finding dinosaurs with DNA and blood cells. Whoa.
Not DNA.
I think they're DNA extracted from. Somebody Google that.
Not
Has
yet.
DNA been extracted from dinosaur tissue, soft tissue?
That'd be very surprising if it hadn't been. But,
Yeah.
But I
Well,
don't think so.
I've pointed out many times the DNA code of one human being, 100 trillion cells roughly. Sergio, maybe 110 million. So 100 million cells. Each of those contain 46 chromosomes. Each chromosome is a tightly wound coil, like a ladder, twisted and twisted. A very amazing coiling system they have. Okay, and uncoiling and duplication system. That's a whole nother story. But if you took one person, one cell, got all the chromosomes out, stretched them out, tied them together, it'd be 6 feet long. Packed in a cell you can't see without a good microscope. Then you got 100 trillion of these cells. They say, if you do the math on that, they'll say one person's DNA would go across the solar system twice. That's the code to make you, Jackson. I wish I could convince you to worship the creator over that instead of claim it came from no reason, from nobody.
Well, I never say it came from nothing and no reason. I don't know for sure where it came from, but I think I know the way it works generally.
So did the first living cell have just one little piece of one little chromosome and it slowly multiplied to become across the solar system twice now?
Like a protocell may not have had chromosomes at all. Or they wouldn't have had chromosomes at all. But
Were they living?
if they were self-replicating and had a self-replicating molecule of some form and had a metabolism of some kind, then technically you could call that living. Yeah.
Well, they talk about this first simple cell. We're off topic here on the whale,
Mhm.
but I taught biology 15 years. There's no such thing as a simple cell.
Well, no, not today. No,
No, but there was in the past.
potentially.
How do you know that?
Well, they've made like lipid bilayer protocells, and
That's
of course they
another-
can't get it to. They haven't put any. They've kind of artificially put some genetic information in it, but to get it to actually do that in the lab, I imagine would not.
Well,
be
when you
easy.
get a bunch of fourth graders in the class and say, we have evidence that this happened to this. The kid's thinking about, I want out of here to go on the playground. Okay, I'll puke that back up on the test. There is evidence for this. There's evidence for that. You didn't show any evidence of any animal actually changing to something else. All they've done, in my humble opinion, is drawn lines on paper. And which is, if you say there's evidence to draw the line between Pakicetus and Ambulocetus, they are very different creatures in thousands of ways. You can find a couple of similarities between them. The DNA symbol may be similar, if you could find it, okay? There may be some similarities. I wouldn't argue with that. But there are probably billions of differences. There are similarities between a Corvette and my wife's Honda CRV. One didn't turn to the other. It's just a design that works. So here we go, Pakicetus, the first whale. So they're making the claim that this dog-like creature from Pakistan, fossils found in Pakistan, turned into a whale. 50-pound creature turned to a 200-ton whale. I'd like to have that demonstrated before I want to pay for that to have all the neighbor kids taught that. Okay.
Well, without a time machine, I couldn't really do that for you. So
okay, so therefore, it's not the strict definition of science: observable, testable. Do it again.
But observable in what sense? We're observing the fossils. We're observing the
Right.
genetic evidence.
Well, do a test. Get a bunch of dog-like animals, make them turn into a whale again. There's plenty of dog-like animals out there.
They're artiodactyls, but I don't think that would even happen again in 50 million years. I think it's very unlikely to. I mean, there's convergent evolution where something similar might evolve with similar. To get it to happen again on its own or at all would probably be impossible.
We just very luckily happen to be alive in the time when we can go back and say, wow, it happened, and now let's move on to something else. I'm just not ready to move on.
Well, I'm not saying move on. I'm just saying, sure, there's more evidence to be found always. There's always going to be more bones to uncover, more genetic evidence to look into, probably.
And you're claiming that these small changes added up to these major changes.
In the same way that 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, and
the
not
same way, though.
1. No, it's not, but it's just
Okay.
kind of a general.
So
sense
if
of how
you
it works.
have a mutation that gives your son 3 arms, which turns out to be pretty handy, hard to find shirts, but okay, it's handy. You can pick up stuff and hold your Coke and drive the car all at the same time and tune the radio now. Okay, so kid's got 3 arms. He finds another girl who's got 3 arms, and they gradually have children and grandchildren. Finally, take over the whole population. We got 3-armed people now. Has anything roughly similar to that been observed? How can you find from the fossils
a
that
3-arm would be more of a birth defect. That'd be a genetic abnormality, which is significant change in one generation. It's just not going to be that way.
So,
are you going to have a kid with blue eyes or brown eyes? Or you have a one blue, sure. But are you going to have someone born with wings? No.
But the amoeba, the first protocell, somehow got wings because they turned into birds. I got that chart right here. How did this?
Amoeba didn't. You're missing a few steps there.
Oh, a few billion steps.
Yeah.
A few billion imaginary steps. Okay. So this protista did not have wings.
Did not have wings.
But this one has wings.
That does have wings.
Did this come from this over billions of generations?
Simple cell a long time ago. All life on
Turned
Earth.
into a bird.
Apparently, all life on Earth came from simple organisms. Yes.
Okay. So this had to somehow, this single cell had to get legs, wings, beak. What all does a bird have that a single cell does not have?
Has a lot of that.
Yeah.
The single cell does.
All those came about by just freak mutations. And you got to have two find each other. Or
I mean, you can say it's an unguided process, but when you get mutations, they're selected by natural selection. So it's really not as unguided as people make it out to be.
Well, yeah, I said natural selection works great, but it only selects.
Right.
It doesn't create anything.
Right. That doesn't create anything, but mutation does.
So the mutation creates.
Yes.
Natural selection selects it to survive.
Yes.
And that's the process that you believe turned a protista into a flamingo and Charles Darwin and a lion. Part like this in public school. Do you think that should?
I would make the more complex phylogenetic chart of a bunch of stuff. I wouldn't make it like a cartoonish illustration like this, but.
Well, I think we could make a family tree of flamingos. I don't know how many kinds of flamingos there are. I don't care. Let's pick a number. Say there's 50 different kinds. Okay. I know there are 64 different kinds of herons, the big bird, the heron. We got some in our lake down here. I would say the herons might have had a common ancestor. The flamingos might have had a common ancestor called a flamingo. See, the Bible says clearly they bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. That's what it says. That's observable. So that's way more in my book science than imagination. Our battery's going to run out in a couple minutes for the computer and for the microphone and all that. So, any closing arguments you would want to make, Jackson?
Well, I just think like a singular piece of evidence that I gave would be easily dismissed, but altogether, I think it's a very strong case, and that's really all there is to say for that. But again, I just want to thank you before my microphone dies for having me here again, and it's always fun.
Yeah.
So thank you. And
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, folks. I will stand my ground. I believe the Bible has never been proven wrong, and evolution has never been proven right. Even if it later turns out to be true, at this moment today, 2024, it's imagination. You have to imagine an animal changing to something else over billions of years, which is also not provable. So, Mike, that's my point. It's not science. That's your religion. Admit it. Go worship your God time and whatever you want to do. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. Come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. In spite of the fact you don't believe what we believe around here, how do you like the place?
it is fun. I'll say that. I like it here.
Would you recommend all the other atheists and evolutionists come?
I think they should. And
Even AJ? Would he come?
yeah, I think
You're
you
welcome.
debate in person. Yeah,
Yeah. Fun place.
I think everybody
I
should.
mean, we feed you, house you, pay for air conditioning. I mean, what else do you want? We can spoon feed you, but I'm not going to do that.
There's certainly better debaters than me. I'm not the best one by far, but
No, that's
show up,
You're trying to not say, Hovind, you're right. All right.